Psalm 90, a prayer of Moses, the man of God. Lord, you have been our dwelling place in all generations. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. You return man to dust and say, Return, O children of man. For 1,000 years in your sight are but as yesterday when it is past, or as a watch in the night. You sweep them away as with a flood. They are like a dream, like grass that is renewed in the morning. And in the morning it flourishes and is renewed. In the evening it fades away and withers. For we are brought to an end by your anger. By your wrath we are dismayed. You have set our iniquities before you, our secret sins in the light of your presence. For all our days pass away under your wrath. We bring our years to an end like a sigh. The years of our life are 70, or even by reason of strength 80. Yet their span is but toil and trouble. They are soon gone and we fly away. Who considers the power of your anger and your wrath according to the fear of you? So teach us to number our days, that we might get a heart of wisdom. Return, O Yahweh, how long? Have pity on your servants. Satisfy us in the morning with your steadfast love, that we may rejoice and be glad all our days. Make us glad for as many days as you have afflicted us, and for as many years as we have seen evil. Let your work be shown to your servants, and your glorious power to their children. Let the favor of the Lord our God be upon us, and establish the work of our hands upon us. Yes, establish the work of our hands. Well, the work of my hands, meaning the computer and the camera that I was going to use to film these couple of psalm devotions that I'm doing tonight, it died on me. So, just doing this on the phone, so you get another shaky face Bible devotion. Here you go. Psalm 90 is interesting because, you know, it was written by Moses. We think maybe Psalm 91 was written by Moses also, but really this is kind of it's a lone gem in a lot of ways as far as a contribution to the book of Psalms from Moses. And so you look back over Moses' life and you think, man, there are like a million points where he could have written this. You know, this lines up with his biography in so many different ways. And in a lot of ways, this really was the tone of his life. So what was the tone of Moses' life? How could we summarize it using this psalm here? Well, first off, let's look at verse 8. You have set our iniquities before you and our secret sins in the light of your presence. Well, that's pretty accurate, right? All of Israel's sin in the wilderness was recounted and brought up again and again. It was punished, and it was discussed between God and Moses, and God took action. Moses prayed, and God would factor those prayers into his action because he's gracious, but he dealt with sin, and he dealt with it spectacularly publicly, didn't he? It was, all of the nations and the people groups that they would run into, the Arameans and so on, the Edomites, they knew exactly who Israel was. By the time they got to Jericho, they sent in the spies, and Rahab was like, look, we know what your God has been doing with you guys. So he brought all of their sins to light, and they were seen in public. And, that's something that's going to happen with us, right? I mean, not only at the judgment seat of Christ where we got to answer for this stuff, but also, I got to be careful when I say this because people start thinking karma when I talk like this. You know, it's not that whatever you put out into the universe is going to send back to you like a cosmic vending machine. It's not like that. But God designed things in such a way that there is cause and effect, and there is a certain amount of comeuppance and come around, and turnabout is fair play and all that. That is a norm in God's creation. And when it doesn't work that way, then he'll come to judge the living and the dead, and he'll settle it all there. But there's nothing hidden that will not be, brought into the light at some point, right? So God has done this with his children as well. You wonder sometimes why you see prominent Christians, whether they're ministry leaders or Christian celebrities or whatever, and they go down to these spectacularly shameful sins, and it's like, how does How does God let that happen? How does he bring shame to his name like that? And actually, if we read stuff like this, it's bringing honor to his name because he's just doing what he said he was going to do. He's like, look, my creation, I'm summarizing here, my creation will give glory to me. My reputation is not really at risk in an eternal sense. And so when people, when we as people suffer publicly for our sins, we feel like it's casting God in a bad light. And it is for a time. But God's not bound by time, and he sees far beyond that. So, Moses saw that not only the punishment for the sin, but the shame that goes along with it. But all of this is in the context of having a God who can be described like verses 1 through 6, like verse 2, before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. Wow. Right? And so when you've got a God like that paying attention to you and he punishes you, he disciplines you, then there's comfort to be had because you can run back to him. He's your rock. He's your fortress. And so Moses knew this very well also. So what he's saying here is basically Romans 11:22, right? Behold the kindness and the severity of God. Two things to keep in mind at all times. The kindness of God. You don't ever want to forget how kind God is to his children. You don't want to forget that he's just, sometimes just, nice for no reason at all. It's just grace, So behold the kindness of God, but also behold the severity of God. And let's not get casual with him because we do have to answer to him. Now let's look at verse 12. So teach us to number our days so that we may get a heart of wisdom. Okay, so in light of all of this, in light of the kindness of God and the severity of God and the bigness of God and the godness of God, the holiness of God, all of these things, in light of all of that, what's he asking for? He's asking God to give us agreement with him. He says, teach us to number our days. You already know our days are numbered. Sometimes we forget that. We get a little bit, self-important. And so teach us to number our days so that we can agree with you. And that's what he means when he says, so that we can get a heart of wisdom, so we can know what God knows. Right? This is the whole point of our podcast. This is the podcast for people who want to know what God knows. Give us a heart of wisdom. And that starts with realizing we're temporary and God is not. So behold the kindness and the severity of God and take stock of yourself in light of who he is. And I'll leave you with this. That's something that I've given you before. One of my favorite definitions of worship it's this: an honest comparison between God and us. That's worship, right? That puts us in our proper posture before him. So Psalm 90 is worship. It is an honest comparison between God and us and a request for him to impart that knowledge to us. So may we live in light of the knowledge of God.